Welcome into the Who's On Postgame Report. The Cardiac Cavs are alive and well at Scott Stadium. Obviously, I'm at an undisclosed location here tonight, not able to make it over to the Scott Stadium like the 56,000 people in attendance at Scott Stadium tonight, the second biggest crowd for Tony Elliott, and boy, were they treated to one interesting game. 3 bad quarters of football for the Cavaliers and one really good quarter at the end. It was the most important quarter, the fourth quarter, as Virginia escapes over Washington State 22-20. How about a walk-off safety? I looked it up. Only 3 times has that happened in the NFL. In college football, it's happened a few more times than that, I think, over the course of college football history. Obviously, so many more games, but really just a wild ending there for the Cavaliers, and we can get into that in just a second. But, let's talk right off the top. Bowl eligible for the first time under Tony Elliott, first time since 2021. Obviously, if they get to the bowl game and actually play it this time, it will be their first bowl game that this program has participated in since 2019. Also, the first 5-game win streak for the program since 2007. This program has only now had 4 5-game win streaks since the year 2000. That is how just, I think, special of a college football season we're seeing right now for the Cavaliers. First 5-game win streak since 2007. It's been a crazy run. And also that 2017, they're the last team for Virginia that has won 3 straight games by 1 possession. If you go back to Florida State, won that one by 8 in overtime. You go back to Louisville, they won that one in overtime. And then you get this one here today, a 2-point win at home against Washington State. And this Washington State team, I think, coming into the week, I said it on the podcast earlier in the week, the 17.5 points or 16.5 points, which I think is what it was by, around kickoff, it just felt disrespectful. I was nervous about that big of a scoreline for Virginia. I don't think I was going to take the points in that situation. And I mean, that Washington State team took Ole Miss to the brink a week ago down at Ole Miss, down in Oxford. And then they take this Virginia team, ranked 18th in the country, having one of the best seasons for the program in quite some time. But Virginia and Tony Elliott, this team they found a way in the end to kind of make it happen. I guess let's take this one from the top. It was just as probably the worst half of football this team has played all season. And I don't think that's even a controversial or hot take. I think even that team out there on the field would have told you the same thing. Is that was a bad half of football. That Virginia only put up, I believe, around 106 yards in the first half. That's the fewest amount of total yards they've had in the first half this season. This team has traditionally got out to better starts offensively, but now that's back-to-back games now at Louisville and now at home against Washington State, where this offense has really struggled to get a rhythm early on. And I kind of attribute a lot of the offensive struggles to this team just not getting into a rhythm right now. And if you look at it, I pointed out at one point in the game, Washington State had 5 drives that were 4+ minutes long. Virginia had 1 drive, and that resulted in a field goal. Like they just were not able to put together drives, and I think it's because they're not getting the momentum that you get when you kind of put together a long drive early in the game, which this team has done a lot this year. I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast a couple times, how Des Kitchings usually has that first drive of the game really well scripted out. They've scored multiple times on their first drives this year. And now that's back-to-back games where it kind of was a stop-start, kind of herky-jerky start for them on offense, and that kind of put them behind the 8 ball. On the other side, Washington State, they come out and Zevi Eckhouse, the quarterback for Washington State, he goes 5 for 5, 71 yards and a touchdown in the first drive. And that kind of got the momentum going for Washington State. And, Virginia, let's go back to that first quarter because they had a chance to seize momentum back their way. And it looked like, all right, now Virginia's kind of getting into a rhythm because Back-to-back three and outs for Virginia to start the game. But then, the UVA defensive front starts kind of dialing up a little bit. They kind of, force, some three and outs, and then Cam Ross, great play. I mean, we could talk about Des Kitchings in the offense. A great play dialed up for Cam Ross there on the rushing attempt, his first of the season. They get him a nice touch. I think that Cam Ross needs more touches. Obviously, he gets hurt in this game, and that's going to impact his ability to get those more touches. So a great start there, a great kind of response there after Washington State's hot start, and then Donovan Platt gets the interception, and you're like, all right, yeah, this Virginia team is off and running now. They're kicking now. But then the fourth down call, I don't think there's any disagreement about going for that fourth down. You had all the momentum, wins at your back, go for it. But to not give the ball to Jamari Taylor, who, I mean, we'll talk about as the game went on, like every single short yardage play that Virginia needed and Jamari Taylor got the ball, they got the first down. That, like, Jamari Taylor was just automatic in those short yardage situations. And they don't do it here. They call a pass play, kind of play action to Jaden Thomas, and they don't get the first down in the play. And then Washington State kind of grabs back the momentum, and they're dominating the time of possession in the first half. But yeah, worst first half, and possibly the worst three quarters of football Virginia has played this entire season. The 10-point deficit that they were down, that was the largest deficit they've been down this entire season. So let's get to the fourth quarter, because that's the fun part. That's the part that people want to talk about. Early on in that fourth quarter, Virginia had only gotten 66 yards in the entire second half to that point. You look at, the defense said the defense, I mean, gosh, the defense really turned up in that fourth quarter for Virginia. Gives them the ball back, and, the ball's in the 3-yard line. They got to go 97 yards when they've only gained 66 yards this entire first half. And this is obviously the biggest drive of the entire game for this Cavaliers team. Like, they had to get that drive. And it got off to a really shaky start, and it came down to a third down where I'm pulling up the drive right here because it's incredible. Virginia needing this drive, needing to go 97 yards to score. Third and 3. Jamari Taylor picks up the first down on 3rd and 3. If they don't get that, they don't win this game. And that's just another example of Jamari Taylor and how key he was. He didn't have the biggest game. It wasn't one of those, is he the best running back in the ACC type games? He had 17 carries for 47 yards, only averaged 2.8 yards per carry. It's nothing to write home about, but he made some huge plays in this game. Going back to that drive there in the fourth quarter, he picks up the first down. And then Chandler Morris to Jamal Edgerrin, who, I mean, let's talk about Jamal Edgerrin. I've really liked this guy's game all year. He was the guy offensively that was coming through for Virginia a lot throughout this game. 5 catches, 102 yards, some big ones. But Jamal, he had 2 back-to-back on this drive for 19 yards, 15 yards to kind of move the ball. Harrison Whaley comes in. Talk about the injury to Xavier Brown. Xavier Brown goes out. So Harrison Whaley is now all of a sudden the change of pace back for Jamari Taylor, who, kind of limped around in this game in times. And then Chandler Morris just making big, veteran quarterback throws, finding Sage Ennis over the middle for a 23-yard gain that sets up the 2-yard rushing touchdown. And, going 97 yards in under 4 minutes, that really changed the momentum of this game. And then, Virginia comes back out, and Jason Brevard gets the interception. And Virginia is kind of set up now. Harrison Whaley coughs up the ball shortly after that. It was the second play after the interception. And, Jack Whitmer makes one of the plays of the game just by falling on the ball and recovering it. I don't know why they had to go to review to see who recovered the football. I don't really know how you could change the play, change the call on the field on who recovered the football. I feel like that's just something that has to get decided on the field. But huge play there. They kind of run the clock down a little bit. Maybe should have been a little bit more aggressive, but they get the field goal to tie things up. Um, and then how about, I mean, Washington State just kind of implodes down the stretch. And I think a lot of it had to do with that Scott Stadium crowd. I mean, you look at the 5 false start penalties, including twice where they had back-to-back false start penalties. But then on the ensuing kickoff return after Will Bettridge tied the game up at 20 apiece, you get the Washington State kick returner. I think it's Leighton Smithson. They're catching the ball on the Washington State 1 yard line, 2 yard line, 1 yard line, like backs them up right away. Like huge bonehead mistake there. And then Washington State gets another false start. They eventually have to take a timeout because Eckhouse can't even hear the play call. That's how loud it was with that Scott Stadium crowd there. And then, I mean, everyone was thinking it's like, oh, could you get a safety here? Like, could the game kind of turn like that? Well, it happened. It didn't look like it at first. I think on the first look, I don't think most people could have said that was a safety, but the second replay you got, I mean, sure enough, who else but Cam Robinson coming in, making that play in the end zone, forcing the ball back. I mean, it was kind of up there with um, it was kind of up there with we talked about that 1995 Florida State game, but the wherewithal to push the ball back into the red zone by Cam Robinson, like that changed the whole course of the game there, and a walk-off safety, unbelievable, and of course it would be Cam Robinson, the guy. To get that walk-off safety there and give Virginia the 22-20 lead. And then, obviously, again, another short yardage play comes up right after that they got to have. They give it to Jamari Taylor on 3rd and 3. He picks it up, and that was the ball game. And Virginia wins this game. And it's, you're kind of thinking throughout this game, all right, so if Virginia loses this game, yeah, they're going to lose some momentum. Yeah, the 56,000 fans that got out there going to be a little disappointed, obviously. And Washington State wasn't as seen as good of a team as I think they are. Just yeah, having watched them last week against Ole Miss and now watching them this week against Virginia, that's a good football team over there. And I know JMU's got them coming up, and you better be ready because that team's going to come to play. But it wouldn't have stopped them in kind of their bigger goals of getting to the ACC championship game because obviously it's a non-conference game. Um, but to kind of find a way to win this, it just kind of keeps the momentum and the buzz around the program building on top of each other for another week. And now I don't know if they move up in the rankings or if they fall back one slot because people penalize them for only beating Washington State by 2 points. But hey, the name of the game is win the ball game in front of you, and that's what this Virginia team has continued to do these last couple of weeks. 5 straight wins for the first time since 2007. It's quite the run that this program is on right now. And then, after the game, watching the broadcast, Tony Elliott was kind of getting on some of his guys, because of, taunting and kind of celebrating and some of the face of the Washington State guys. There's some chewing going back and forth there. I don't think Tony was really happy to get the Gatorade bath, to be all that honest with you, because, this program has kind of reiterated this week, they're 1 win away from getting to bowl eligibility. They're 6-1 now on the season, but, they've got grander goals than that. They really believe and think and want to get to that ACC championship game, and that is still well ahead of them now. It's all ACC play from here on out. You got UNC, at UNC, at Cal, Wake Forest, at Duke. Then you've got Virginia Tech to close the year. So it's all ACC play from here on out. A lot of winnable games ahead of them, but this win definitely keeps the momentum going and kind of going towards those larger goals that this Virginia team has their eyes on. So yet again, I mean, you think back to that 2007 team, You think back to some other teams in UVA history that kind of really personified that cardiac calves mantra. This team right here, first team in UVA history to win back-to-back overtime games. Um, at against Florida State and at Louisville, and now they come back with this winning on a walk-off safety. I mean, that it personifies the cardiac calves right there, if you could say it. Tony Elliott said afterwards, the football team made a decision to come out in the second half and find a way to win. That's what they did. Back to back games that are just ugly as it gets, especially offensively for a team that was putting up yards and points like nobody else. Those first few weeks, this team has found a way to win the past couple games, and now here we go for this big stretch here. You got 5 games left in this season. Um, we'll see how the Virginia responds from here. I mean, some big injuries in this one. Cam Ross went out at halftime. Xavier Brown went out in the second half. Those are going to be 2 big injuries to watch offensively. Brady Wilson didn't play tonight after he returned to practice this week, so hopefully he gets back up to speed next week and he can start that game at UNC. Um, yeah, so injury wise, it's still kind of a precarious situation for Virginia. Chandler Morris looked like he got banged up there at one point with his shoulder. Um, and he's looked a little off at times the past couple weeks, but he's made some big plays when it mattered. So we'll see if Virginia can kind of find some offensive momentum going into this trip down to Chapel Hill. It's gonna be an interesting one next week. That's gonna do it for the Who's on Post Game Report. Virginia winning 22-20 over Washington State. We will have more here on the Who's on Podcast YouTube feed coming up, as well as our normal podcast feed on the Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Chris Wright from the Sabre.com is going to join me Sunday night, so that'll be out on Monday. We're going to talk a little bit about this game, go into our full recap about this, and also a little bit about last week's UVA men's basketball scrimmage. So you can catch that on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you want to find the Who's On podcast. We're there for you. That's going to do it here for this UVA Who's On post game report. Virginia winners 22-20 over Washington State.